but it was about getting the experience and going to the right places and following on and keeping your eyes and ears open.
Princess Anne has not shied away from letting us know how she genuinely feels about her mother's passing. From being with Queen Elizabeth II in her final 24 hours, to curtsying her in the afterlife, and accompanying the coffin through thick and thin, Princess Anne's current life is no fairy tale. However, she's respected and remained by her late mother's side. I'm your host Michaela, let's jump right in. Princess Royal Anne is the only daughter and second child of Elizabeth and former Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. Upon Anne's birth, she was lined up to be the second succession to the thrones belonging to the 16 Commonwealth realms. But following the birth of 2 younger brothers, 6 nephews and nieces, and 1 grandnephew, Anne's spot moved down to 11th place in line currently. Most people know of the princess through her gracious worldwide charity work as a benefactor of over 200 charitable organizations among her royalty title. She's an exceptional horseback rider according to reports, and this is a sport she shared a passion with her mother. In her time, Anne has received 1 gold and 2 silver medals at the European Eventing Championships, and was also the first British royal family member to compete in the Olympic Games. Who has been your favorite ruler of the British monarchy so far? Let me know in the comments below. At the time of Anne's birth on August 15, 1950, the former queen was a princess herself and gave birth to her only daughter at the Clarence House in Buckingham Palace with Anne's father. Anne was raised in the palace by the royal governess, Catherine Peebles, who provided Anne with early education. Catherine also took care of the princess's brother, Prince Charles, as a governess. In light of King George VI's death, Queen Elizabeth was slated to take over the throne, so Anne was given the title and position of Her Royal Highness, the Princess Anne in full, at the time of Elizabeth's coronation, Anne could not attend because she was too young. The first Buckingham Palace company, a Girl Guides company, was rectified and included the Holy Trinity Brompton Brownie Pack to ensure that the princess could establish relationships with girls her age. Up until 1963, Anne remained under private guardianship before she was enrolled at Benedictine School. She completed her full schooling within a 6-year period with the same amount of GCE O levels and 2 additional A levels. As for Anne's first royal public appointment, the princess attended this when she was 18, immediately after she left schooling. Anne instituted a blended educational and training center in 1969 in Shropshire, while also attending her first state royal trip with her parents when they traveled to Austria. Anne took part in a 3-day British eventing team for the European Championships in 1975 and won medals for her team and her individual performance. The princess has frequented funeral services of many foreign dignitaries on the behalf of her late mother, as Elizabeth never attended them for customary reasons. In her time as royalty so far, Anne has also made foreign trips on the United Kingdom's behalf as well. As early as the 1970s, Anne took on the president role for Save the Children, as well as initiated the Princess Royal Trust for Carers in the 90s. She has participated in charity work worldwide and targets disadvantaged areas at large. After the Queen retired in 1961, Anne was elected by London University graduates to be their institution's chancellor. In addition, the princess also served for the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland as Her Majesty's High Commissioner. In 1990, Anne was appointed as the first royal family member to make an official Soviet Union visit as a government guest. Since she has also made many appearances there on occasions as a Colonel-in-Chief of Australia's regiment. Furthermore, Anne worked as St. John's Commandant-in-Chief for the St. John Ambulance, where she assisted the younger generations with shaping their futures. Anne is a British representative for the International Olympic Committee, as well as a London Organizing Committee member for the Olympic Games, and holds the position of Royal Fellow of the Royal Society. At the moment, there are only 5 known Royal Fellows, which include the Princess Royal herself, the Prince of Wales, and the Dukes of Edinburgh, Kent, and Cambridge. In 2011, Anne was granted the Chancellor of the University of Edinburgh title, but she's obtained far more titles to her name and royalty since. From 1950 to 1953, Anne was referred to solely as Her Royal Highness Princess Anne of Edinburgh. From 52 to 73, the world saw Anne transition to Her Royal Highness the Princess Anne, and then between 1973 to 1987, the princess was required to add Mrs. Mark Phillips to her previous title because of her marriage to Mark. Presently, the princess is referred to as Her Royal Highness the Princess Royal from 1987 to now. Aside from the aforementioned, Princess Anne has been honored with the following: the Queen Elizabeth II Coronation Medal, Commemorative Medal for the Centennial of Saskatchewan, Grand Cross of the Order of the House of Orange, Commander Grand Cross of the Order of the White Rose of Finland, and more. Her additional achievements are listed as Fellow of the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons, University of the Highlands and Islands, Chancellor, Memorial University of Newfoundland, Doctors of Laws, Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal New Zealand Army Nursing Corps, and more. Anne tied the knot with Mark Phillips in 1973. They were housed together at Gagcombe Park after their marriage, but declared their plans to separate in 1989, followed by the divorce in 1992. The couple shared 2 children together in their time, their son Peter Phillips and their daughter Zara Phillips. However, both children carry no royal titles. Anne remarried for the second time in 1992 to a Royal Navy commander named Timothy Lawrence. For this wedding, the pair had their ceremony in Scotland, as England's church has an anti-divorce remarriage law in place. For Anne and Timothy's relationship, the two resided in a Dolphin Square flat based in London for a period of time, but most recently they remain in the countryside. As for fun facts, Anne and Mark were once a part of a kidnapping attempt made on them in 1974 while they were en route to Buckingham Palace. The alleged culprit accused of the crime was Ian Ball, who was later prosecuted and detained as per the Mental Health Act. In accordance with articles at the time, Ian desired to hold on to them with a £2 million ransom fee attached to the kidnapping, so that he could later give the full funds to the NHS. In 2001, Anne faced court charges and was fined £400 for pleading guilty to speeding. Anne also held a place in the 1976 Olympic Games as a part of the British team for the event that took place in Montreal. For this, Anne rode the Queen's horse named Goodwill. Now let's discuss how Princess Anne really feels about the former Queen Elizabeth's death and how it relates to what we currently know. Most recently, the world has suffered from collective shock and grievance over the death of Queen Elizabeth II. However, understandably so, no one is sadder than Princess Anne. As her only daughter and one of her closest relationships, it's natural that Anne was teary-eyed as she viewed the floral tributes to the late Queen with her children. According to Anne, the princess was right by her mother's side when she peacefully passed on Thursday at the Balmoral Castle. The former queen was 96 at the time, holding the title of the longest-running queen in monarch history. A massive crowd of mourners stood right outside the Aberdeen Shire estate as they applauded the senior members of the royal family. The majority of the Queen's children and some of their family were in attendance for the prayer service that took place at Crathie Kirk, including Anne's husband, Vice Admiral Sir Tim Lawrence, son Peter Phillips, and Lady Louise Windsor. Prince Andrew thanked visitors for their well wishes. The Queen's grandson described the immense luck he felt for getting to spend the majority of his childhood with Elizabeth, and Princess Eugenie, Andrew's daughter, referred to Elizabeth as brilliant. So far, the royals continue to honor the late queen in light of her death, and Anne has once again filled the world with emotions when she curtsied in front of her mother's coffin for the entirety of Edinburgh as the coffin was entering the Holyrood Palace on Sunday. The coffin began its journey at the Balmoral Castle that morning for 6 hours until it reached its first destination, and its continued whereabouts leading up to the funeral service on the 19th can be mapped throughout the remainder of this week to pay respect to the Queen. The hearse which transports the coffin has a see-through display so that onlookers can retrieve glimpses of it as it remains dressed in the royal standard of Scotland. Elizabeth will be laid to rest next to Mark, who was her husband of 73 years before his 2021 passing, at Windsor Castle at St. George Chapel. Elizabeth's family will also be surrounded by her burial spot, including her parents King George VI, who passed in 1952, and her mother and sister Princess Margaret, who both died in 2002. The group will be interred at King George's Memorial Chapel as a part of St. George's. As for the 72-year-old princess again, Anne's statement released by the Buckingham Palace for her mother came on Tuesday evening and describes Anne's gratitude for being next to Elizabeth before she passed. Quote, "I was fortunate to share the last 24 hours of my dearest mother's life. It has been an honor and a privilege to accompany her on her final journeys. We may have been reminded how much of her presence and contribution to our national identity we took for granted. To my mother, the Queen, thank you." Anne also paid tribute to her brother Charles, who has since been newly appointed as king, with, "I am also grateful for the support and understanding offered to my dear brother Charles as he accepts the added responsibilities of the monarch." That's been today's WATN. Thanks for watching, friends!